All right, so in this video, I'm about to show you how to power your camper by shoving about 250 pounds worth of stuff in a 5-pound bag. So if you want to learn about some solar, some inverters, and some batteries, stay tuned. So in the Axiom, my off-grid cargo trailer camper, I've got 150 amps of solar charging capabilities. I've got 30 amps of shore charging capabilities. I have 840 amp hours of lithium batteries. If you want to learn how you can install this all into a very tight space and have plenty of room to be able to work on it, stay tuned and you'll find out. So it wouldn't be a DIY project if you didn't have everyone's own degree of a little bit of wire mismanagement. So I've got to clean up just a few things, but this is a work in progress. So please disregard that. Give me a little bit of grace on that, just a little bit. Also, I have changed around my bus bar configurations. I've got some new products coming in for some fusing for some of my components. So until now, we're just going to consider these protected by goodwill and safe work processes, I guess. And then if you see these two yellow wires, that's some temporary runs from my solar input coming in as I'm currently rebuilding this bunk area. And once I rebuild that, I've got to run some permanent THHN's lines to my solar disconnect. So until then, I'm just using these as temporary just to supply some solar power into these chargers. Aside from that, where to begin? I guess the easiest power you're going to get into your trailer before going into the realm of solar and batteries and chargers and all that is going to be your shore power plug. So this here is a 10 gauge cord I have for my 30 amp shore power cord. One of the first things I did in here was I didn't want to have a standard RV connection on the outside that could be a point of water entry getting into the wall of the trailer. I didn't want the heavy power cord hanging off the side, possibly someone trip over, rip it out or anything like that. So if you see right there, this is one of those portals that I had mentioned in another video of a 3-inch PVC clean out that it's got the hub connection and the male plug that screws on from the bottom. And so you can see a little bit of daylight coming through there. And you see some ground deploy solar panel wires that are going through that right now. But that's a 3-inch clean out, and internal diameter is about 3 inches. And initially when I built the trailer, actually the first thing I did was I cut my shore power cord, put on a 30 amp twist lock on it. And so just slightly out of view right there, or just out of reach rather, is the male end of my shore power that goes to my fuse, or my breaker panel that's inside that cabinet there out of view. And so with this, we're able to very easily fit it through that 3-inch portal right there. We're able to run our ground deploy solar wires through there. In the past, we'd ran power and signal wire going to our diesel heater. We've ran speaker wires out there. We've ran extension cords in and out of there for one reason or another. So having something like that is much more multi-purpose than just one dedicated, in my opinion, one dedicated 30 amp, twist lock plug, RV style. It's going to fade, break. It's going to, turn strange colors due to UV rays. And so with this, I can bring in and out whatever I want without making multitudes of holes into the side of my trailer. So on my cord that goes out to the power pole, then if we're at an electric campsite or whatever, it would have a standard 30 amp plug on the end of it. And then on the interior side, I've got this twist lock 30 amp plug. Kind of can see it a little bit there, but that's 30 amp, 120 volt. And then right there is the mating pair of that's the male plug that goes inside that cabinet there for my breaker panel. And that's where I supply 30 amp shore power to the trailer itself and distributes out to the various different breakers in that panel. So with doing that twist lock, I made a small pigtail, which I'm able to plug into my inverter, twist onto that end of the plug over there, and then supply full power from the inverter into the breaker panel inside that cabinet. And so that makes, I don't have to have any type of automatic transfer switch, any type of disconnect. I never have to worry about, did I throw the right switch or whatever. this is foolproof for switching over from shore power to inverter power, just simply with that. This is a 12 gauge extension cord. I cut it down to about 30 inches, put on a 30 amp twist lock here. Truly, this extension cord can supply technically about 20 amps. The 1500 watt inverter will supply less than that. This is a 12 volt to 120 volt E&L inverter. It's a 1500 watt to 3100 watt on a surge power. I previously had a 2200 watt to 4000 watt E&L inverter here. That one worked completely flawlessly for me until the point that I decided I wanted to switch over to this one to test this one out a little bit. I got this one around Christmas time to use for either some mobile power or for my son for truck camping and supplying him with power for various different needs. So before planning to go out on a camping trip of any sorts and depending on it, I wanted to prove it out here. And I've used this on various different occasions, either out here in the trailer or inside in the garage. And actually today I ran it for 5.5 hours running a 1500 watt heater in my garage, except for about 5 minutes total during that 5.5 hours that ran continuous. So pulling full duty on the 1500 watt inverter, it actually was pulling slightly more than that. So this thing has proved itself completely to me today. So aside from the inverter, I've got a 30 amp Victron wall charger over there to where I can charge off of shore power into the trailer. And then I've got 3 of the Victron Smart Solar MPPT. It's the 100-50s. And so on my roof, I've got 10 100 watt solar panels that during the build of this trailer, it was an evolution of how much power do I think I'm going to need, and kind of some growing pains of, well, hey, here's 200 watts of solar panels. How much can we achieve with that? Yeah, that's great. Let's do 400. So a couple more solar panels. That's awesome. Let's get another battery. Let's do 600 watts. Hey, that's even better. Let's get a big inverter. Yeah, that's completely awesome. Let's do more. So then finally up to 10 100 watt solar panels for 1,000 watts of solar. And then when I wanted even more power, then I added another Victron Smart Solar 150 MPPT, and I have that for my ground deploy panels. So I also run 3, I'm going to say highly overrated 180 watt solar panels that should be a total of 540 watts of solar. In reality, by the time they start heating up and losing some of their efficiency, they pull in about 350 on a good day. But it is still more power that I can deploy out, or, so this is about a 5-foot lead that goes just outside of that portal to where I can connect the 25 or 50-foot extension cords for my solar wires. And so if we're camping in the shade, I can stretch that over to be able to catch some stronger sunlight, or I can adjust those to face the sun and pull in as much power as possible. So truly, I have 150 amps of solar charging capabilities here. But in reality, I have probably on a good day, I'd pull in about 1,300 watts, which is about 100 amps of solar power at the 12 volt, overall system voltage. But with that, running through the inverter, I can run my 6K BTU window unit air conditioner. I can run a microwave, which is just slightly here out of view. I can run my wife's hair straightener, her hair dryer, electric coffee maker, toaster, literally anything that we want to power out here when we go camping, we can run that off of here. We ran an air fryer many times off of that. I made one kind of funny little video with this one and a 100 amp hour battery where I was making some chicken nuggets and French fries out by a frozen lake as we were watching some wildlife. So, with having the right combination of products together, you can really achieve quite a lot. So right now you can see that this is very tight. It's completely honest. It's very, very tightly orientated. One difficulty that I've had in this trailer is initially I never built it for solar. So in this entire space is about 3.5 feet, not even quite 3.5 feet. It's about 18 inches tall. and it's about 18 or 20 inches deep. And so previously I had the batteries across the floor and all my chargers and such were across the back wall. So with that, I had some computer fans to try to keep the heat sinks on those nice and cool. They've all worked very well. You can see some lights right down here, some blue and red lights. And so that's a thermal switch that I would put a thermocoupler on one of the, right about, I think it's right about here on the charge controllers is the warmest spot that will be created on them. So I'd put that thermocoupler on that hot spot. And then anytime that the charge controllers would really even warm up, not get hot, but just simply just warm up, it would turn on some computer fans on the backside of the heat sinks to help keep those cool. So when just this winter, I got these 3-watt cycle. It's technically labeled as a 300 amp hour, but they had a mislabeling situation. They've since derated them down to 280 amp hours. I'm still very happy with these. They have done a great job. But so I got 3 of these 280 amp hour lithium batteries from Watt Cycle. And so I've got 840 amp hours of power there. I wanted to fit that in the same space. My wife threatened me quite a lot to not take any more of her storage space inside the trailer. So I was limited to, I have to stay there. I have to stay here. I only took a few more inches, so don't tell her. In any case, the batteries have been great. I stood them up on end. They are able to do that. These batteries do advertise that you can install them in any orientation. And I also checked as far as where the BMS is. The BMS is actually across the front side here. So as long as you're not putting them face down on the terminals, then they're not going to be holding heat in, and those BMSs can dissipate their heat as they need to. So to make this entire cabinet space more user-friendly to me, to where I can hook things up, I can service them, I can diagnose any issues, or I can maintain them completely, I hinged it. So I've got a piano hinge across the bottom, and then right here you can see these light colored circles where I haven't painted or stained that area yet. So I've got a metal grill on the back side of each of these. So, the 3 MPPT solar charge controllers, right here is kind of the backside of the warmest spot of the inverter. And then I've got the wall charger over there, just at the top corner there. So I've got a thermocoupler. Can't get it out. I've got a thermocoupler that I've kind of forced into the cooling fins of this inverter, to where when it's in the closed position, it's near the top of the overall space here. So if any of these chargers are creating heat and warming this space up, for one, these cooling fins, either when it's running, they're going to be the hottest item in this entire cabinet, or if it's not running and the solar chargers are only charging, from a heavy day of use from the day before, but the inverter is not running, this is still going to be kind of absorbing the ambient temperature inside that space. And so and I can also move that around as needed, but I can just let it run itself. So I've set that thermocoupler, I think, to like 84 degrees, that if that temperature sensor gets to 84 degrees, it turns on all 5 of those fans and is able to pull the air through the cooling fins of the heat sinks of the 3 charge controllers, off the back of the wall charger, and then off the back side of the inverter, and actually evacuate that warm air out of that cabinet. And you see the lovely assortment of Swiss cheese holes that I've created down here. That goes into a cabinet on that side that also has quite a lot of openings to it available, that when those come on, they're able to pull fresh air into this entire space and pull it out into the general cabin of this trailer. So this is what it would look like if we're plugged in with the inverter powering the trailer with the 120 volt. So the twist lock is on here. It just gets a slight little twist and it cannot come out. We've got the regular 120 volt plug into the receptacle, the GFCI at the end of the inverter here. And all we have to do is just turn it on. It powers up the inverter, supplies 120 volt to the entire trailer. The three 280 amp hour watt cycle batteries. They're 12 volt. They're ran in parallel. I've got terminal fuses on the top of each of those. They're supplying power into my bus bar. My 3 chargers and the wall charger over here as well is also supplying power into that bus bar. And then the inverter pulls off of that. And so I can have all 3 of these running at the same time completely on their own. I don't have any type of changes or settings or controls I have to do to this on a regular basis, short of just hooking up the ground deploy panels if we're using those somewhere. If we're at a campsite and we want to be able to power the wall charger, I just switch out the plug into the shore power plug, plug it into a power pole, and then we're able to supply power off of the entire trailer. And then I can also take the plug from the shore power and plug it into an outlet that I've got here at the back side of this cabinet area. So previously we had about 465 amp hours of lithium batteries. We've now upgraded to 840 amp hours of lithium, and that should allow us to run off grid for a much longer amount of time. We can discharge the batteries while at the same time of the chargers or the wall charger recharging the batteries as well. There's no conflict with that. You can pull power out at the same time you're putting power in. The batteries just kind of act as a buffer for that and will supply all the power that I need to the inverter. So if you have any questions on this type of a setup, I do have plans to make a lot of videos related to this type of system, or even a smaller, more entry-level system. So I hope you'll check back on my other solar videos as I start producing those. This isn't my first version of this. I started initially with a 15 amp charger, went to a 30 amp charger, then had the 15 and the 30 amp charger, and had a 30 and 50 amp charger, and then 250s, and now 350s. So it's been quite a progression on solar charging capabilities, but I found something that really works for our family, so I thought I would share it with you guys. The change of being able to hinge this panel, and it's going to be screwed off on the side, and then there's a center panel that's going to be dividing this from, just a bunk storage, for clothing or whatever. The addition of changing this to being a hinged panel and having all my chargers on the front side really makes it to where it's very user-friendly for being able to access the components. And then with their installation, then they're able to have their heat sinks in a vertical position to where they're self-cooling, and then plus the fans being able to cool as well. So it should run very, very comfortable for the devices. I previously had pretty much the same stuff, but on the back wall and a little bit more closed off. And so this should keep things much more comfortable. So I do have a lot of these videos planned. So I hope you check back and check them out. And hopefully this can help you with your build. Thanks.